Hey guys, welcome to Mad Scientist BBQ. I'm Jeremy Yoder, and today I'm here at Fat Sack Smokers with my buddy Eric, and we're going to do a video all about fire management. Now, if you're new to the channel or you haven't been around here very much, be sure to subscribe down below and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on all the newest information and hopefully enjoy the videos that we put out. Noch einmal.
Do one more.
Yeah.
Okay.
One more time. You can be the first to see it and hopefully stay up to date with all new. Nah, I don't like it.
You were on a roll. That was a good one.
Well, I just didn't like how it was going. Let's do it again. Hey guys, welcome to Mad Scientist BBQ. I'm here with Eric West from Fat Stack Smokers. No, I don't like that one at all. I hope that all of this information will be helpful to you when you're about, try it again. All about fire management.
Closer to each other.
Kind of a half step.
Do you guys feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Oh,
Hey,
sorry. What? You said comfortably.
Hey guys, welcome to Mad Scientist BBQ. Now let's get into the video. Now the basic principles of fire management are pretty simple, but there are some intricacies that require a little bit more explanation. And so when we do fire management, there are a couple things that we want to make sure that we do. So first, we want to burn an efficient fire. So we want the wood that we're burning not only to be a major flavoring component for the meat, but it's also what cooks the meat. The second thing, and this is the big key, if you take nothing else away from this video, you have to understand this concept. There's a difference between what's called clean smoke and dirty smoke. Clean smoke is essentially wood that's being burned in an oxygen-rich environment, producing smoke that you can barely see. A lot of times it comes out of the smokestack and looks just like waves of heat. You don't actually see smoke. And a lot of people think that means, oh no, you're not smoking the meat. Well, let me tell you, you are smoking the meat. Whereas dirty smoke often comes from an oxygen poor fire, people are choking it off, and that is the absolute worst thing you can do when barbecuing. Now, a lot of people get caught up in competition recipes and injections and brines and all kinds of other things to try to make their barbecue magical. Now, what makes barbecue magical is none of those things. There's a reason why no restaurant serves competition barbecue. What makes barbecue magical is what happens in the firebox. What happens in the firebox is where all the magic takes place, well, all the witchcraft that makes barbecue kind of a primal, delicious thing that everybody enjoys. So doing that right is the key to producing great barbecue. You can forget rubs, you can forget sauces, you can forget marinades, but you cannot forget good fire management. Now, Eric builds tons of smokers for people in the Los Angeles area and all around the world, actually, even to the Middle East. And so you not only have to build the smokers properly, but you have people who come in here and know virtually nothing about fire management. Maybe they've only ever used a pellet smoker before. So for you, you've had to teach them from zero to I can run this pit. And sometimes it's a big 500 like this. What are the problems that people usually have? Like what are the issues, the big issues that come up over and over again?
Well, Jeremy, I think you kind of nailed it. The basic principle behind running an offset smoker is all about having the right fire burning the right way next to the meat that you're cooking. And you can put any kind of rubs or sauces you want on there. If your fire's no good, your barbecue's no good. It's just that simple.
Preach. And
that's true from the smallest little patio models all the way up to the big 500,000 gallon trailer pits. And so really knowing how to select, cut and add fuel to these fires to get the fire to do what you want it to do, to cook the meat the way you want it to cook, is everything with these things. It's not too, complex of a process, but there are some rules you have to follow.
Right, so I always say that barbecue isn't difficult, but it requires patience. Basically, it's not hard to know the basics of what's going on. It's just to be paying attention to all the details, to be watching like a hawk. That's the difficult part about it. If you can do that, you can produce great barbecue over and over and over again. It's no secret to it.
That's right. It's not, set it and forget it. It's labor intensive. You're going to be there throughout the duration of your cook, actively managing your fire to make sure it's doing what you want it to do.
Right, and so with an offset, you're going to be there all day. It'll ruin your day, but if you have the world's best barbecue at the end of it, it's totally worth it. And there's a reason people keep buying offset smokers, even though it requires so much more labor. It's because, in the end, it's what will produce the absolute best product. Now with that, we're going to move on to a critical component in fire management that people often don't really talk about. It's about wood. We're going to go through the kind of wood you need, the size of wood you need, and how you need to get it prepared to burn in your smoker.
You're like, you want to talk about how to manage your fuel, and I just produce a bag of charcoal slowly and bring it back.
When you're barbecuing, one of the major components is your wood. You can use basically any hardwood. Now, a lot has been written on the internet about this kind of wood works for this, so you'll maybe buy bags of wood chunks online or at a hardware store or at a barbecue store, and it'll give you a list of this works with chicken, this works with pork, this one works with beef. Really, far more important than the kind of wood you're burning is the kind of fire you burn with that wood. Now, as long as you're using hardwood, so a wood that bears a fruit or a nut, you're going to be safe, all right? So there are a few examples of wood that you wouldn't want to use. One hardwood that's just a particularly strong flavor is mesquite, so if you're smoking for a long time, stay away from that. But what you absolutely, positively never want to do is burn something like pine. Now, I once had a wood-fired pizza that somebody cooked with pine. This knucklehead seriously was using pine. There was black smoke coming out of the stack, and it was a disgusting pizza. The reason you don't want to use pine or woods like that is because you're going to be burning sap and producing just horrendously awful tastes. Don't do that. So find a good wood in your area and one that you like, and you'll be set. Also, if you want to know more about the science of wood burning, look for my upcoming video on wood science. And then finally, Erica's going to show us how to get the wood to the appropriate size for your smoker.
So now that you've got your wood species all picked out and you're ready to build your fire, you got to make sure you're using the right size fuel. Because the truth is, the size of the wood you're going to burn in your cooker is going to very much depend on the size of the cooker itself. And somebody who's burning a fire inside of a 1,000-gallon restaurant pit is not going to burn the same size logs as somebody who's burning a wood fire for, say, a little backyard-sized offset. Furthermore, wood, of course, being a natural product, doesn't come in straight, perfect sticks from Mother Nature. It grows in all kinds of wacky shapes and sizes. And you'll get wood from the wood pile that'll look anything from these kind of, quarter to half splits that are kind of rectangular, but way too big to be burned in anything but the biggest cookers, all the way up to something like this sucker here. And you wouldn't want to try and throw this on your fire. Okay, so the first step is going to be to take this guy and split him down to a usable diameter, and then we'll come back to the chop saw and chop the ends down if we need to shorten it up and make it the right size for our coal bed. So there are a bunch of different ways to split your wood down to size. Everything from a traditional axe or a maul or a sledgehammer setup, all the way up to a little air-over hydraulic or electric wood splitter like this, up to a big industrial-sized gas-powered wood splitter. Doesn't really matter how you do it, but you do want to make sure that you're splitting down to the right diameter for the size cooker that you're going to be using. For most offsets, you're going to want a diameter of splits that's no bigger than about 3 inches. And a handy way to think of that is like a soda can, or about as big around as your wrist. Now, today I've got my little electric splitter here, so I'm going to go ahead and throw this log on here and pop it down to size. One thing to note, if you're going to do this at home with any kind of a power tool, is you want to make sure and know your way around the tool, read the manual, and take all proper safety precautions before you play with any power tools whatsoever. Above all, you want to make sure you're operating these tools safely. I would much rather spend my Saturday tending to a fire than waiting in line at the emergency room. Seriously with this guy. Oh yeah, that looks about right.
Yeah, great.
Kind of a 2-for-1 deal. There we go. So this guy's about right. Maybe a little bit on the small side for some of the bigger pits, but this will burn really nice and clean. Now that we've got our wood split down to the right diameter, the last step is going to be make sure it's the right length. Now most splits, when you get them from a wood yard, are going to be about 16 inches long, which for your larger pits, a 500 gallon like the one we're going to cook on with Jeremy a little later, this is going to be a perfect length. But for smaller pits, like backyard models like the 60, which we're also going to play with in a little bit here, this is going to be just a little bit too long. You can tell how long your split should be on a smaller backyard pit using the width of your door. If you try to take this piece of wood and put it through the door and it won't fit, it's probably going to be too long for your coal bed. To bring it down to size, we're going to use the chop saw and just take a few inches off the end. And now we chop. Make sure to get me cutting off my finger on camera. Safety first, shunk. So now we've got our wood you know, split down to a nice diameter and cut down to a nice size. But my question is, why do we need to bother putting this guy on a fire? And why can't I burn this sucker?
Oh, it's a great question. So you might think, it's like, is it really worth it to go through all this hassle just to smoke some meat? The answer is absolutely yes. It's crucial. Now, the reason offset smokers are still popular is because they produce the best barbecue you can possibly get. Now, other kinds of pits like a Weber Smoky Mountain or a Big Green Egg, what you do is you put chunks of wood in there and the wood smolders. And you only put a little bit in because otherwise the meat gets over smoked. Well, we're burning 100% wood in these offset smokers. How come the meat doesn't get over smoked? The reason is because what we're producing when we burn the wood is something totally different. What you get in those kinds of other smokers is smoldering. What we get is clean flame. So if you put something like this in a little backyard smoker, you're going to have all kinds of smoldering. You're going to see tons of white smoke, and you can only deal with so much of that. Otherwise, you're going to ruin the meat that you've spent hours and hours preparing. So the size of the wood is often overlooked, but it absolutely is a necessary component of producing great barbecue. A lot of times people will contact me and they'll say, hey, I'm having trouble managing my fire, and then I'll always ask, what kind of smoker do you have? And what size wood are you using? Oftentimes, people are trying to use big chunks of wood like this in backyard smokers. That is the worst thing you can possibly do, no matter what you try. If you're using wood like this, you're never going to produce good smoke in a backyard smoker. So, produce wood that's the correct size, burn a clean, efficient fire, and you're going to be able to produce the kind of barbecue that's going to keep people coming back for more and more, over and over again. You're going to have too many friends to count. Now we're going to move on to showing you how to build fires in different sized pits. For a little 60-gallon smoker, this is beautiful, exactly what you want. But for a 500-gallon pit, you can throw in something like this, and that coal bed is going to be so big and so hot that it will eat this up, no problem. So we're going to show you the process by which you would run each fire in the different size pits, and you'll be able to, from that, work out what kind of splits you need for your size smoker. A great way to start a fire on a medium to larger size smoker is maybe something you haven't tried before. But right here I have in my hand some used butcher paper from some briskets that I wrapped for an event that I did yesterday. So you can actually repurpose this to start the fire again. And all you really need, you can have a lighter, you have the wood that you're going to need, and then you have the butcher paper. It's soaked in grease. So this goes up and it burns for a long time, and it might not seem like enough to get the job done, but the grease that's embedded in the paper keeps it going, kind of like a candle wick, right? So unlike just plain butcher paper, which will burn really quickly, this keeps it going for long enough to get the fire really to start off well. And then after you light this, you can walk away and come back in 30 minutes and you've got a raging fire. So this is how I like to set it up. The first thing I like to do is I like to put the butcher paper in the firebox. So the process is pretty simple. First you put in the butcher paper, and then you build your lattice of wood around it, then you light the butcher paper, and you're good to go. One important note, the first logs that you put in here on a round firebox, make sure that they go in horizontally, because if you put them in this way, they're going to roll to the middle and you're not going to be able to make a proper structure. So put them in horizontally so they stay in place, and then the framework that you build above that will be stable. Now, if you were here right now, you could hear some sizzling and crackling. Maybe it's coming through on the camera. But what's happening is that grease, the rendered beef fat that's in the butcher paper, that's burning, and that's what's really going to get the fire going. So at this point, we can walk away, and in a few minutes, we'll have a rip-roaring fire. But while we wait, I think it's always best to open up the doors to the smoker so you get maximum airflow, which can kind of have the negative effect of smoke coming back in your face if you're standing right next to the firebox like I am right now. but it'll get the fire going more quickly, and then you're not filling up your smoker with dirty, gross smoke from the start of a fire. Now, the fastest and easiest way to start a fire in a big smoker is by using a torch like this. This is what I do 70% of the time. So all you have to do is point the torch at the wood, and you already construct your kind of lattice framework of wood in there, and just nuke it with the torch until you got a rip-roaring fire, and then you're ready to go. And one other thing, just remember, this is a round bottom firebox, so the first 2 pieces of wood that you put in, or 3 if you want, are going to go horizontally so the whole thing doesn't collapse. So with that being said, this is the easiest and probably my preferred method of lighting a fire. When you use the torch method, I did say it's the easiest, but just keep a couple things in mind. The first thing is you want to point the torch down to the wood at the bottom, because the flame and heat will rise and you'll be able to light the chunks of wood on top. Also, when you use the torch, a lot of times you'll use it for a while and then it looks like the fire has gone out. Well, that's just because the source of heat is now different. So if you char everything inside really well, it looks like the fire's going to die, but you walk away for 2 or 3 minutes and you come back and you got an open flame fire and all the wood is caught. It's just because there's going to be an abrupt change from heat from the torch to heat generated by the wood that's inside burning itself. Now, one critically important aspect that we neglected to mention earlier is how dry your wood is. I'm going to go into a lot of depth in my wood science video, but I'll boil it down really simply. What you want in your wood is about 20% moisture. Now, there are 2 ways you can dry wood. You can dry wood by having it kiln dried, or you can let it sit out until it reaches kind of an equilibrium with its environment at about 20% moisture. If you kiln dry your wood, what you're going to get is wood that catches immediately and burns really quickly. It doesn't have sustained heat characteristics, and it doesn't provide good flavor for the meat itself. So what you want is naturally dried wood. So you let it sit out, and usually in big piles. It's going to be seasoned wood is often what it's called. Doesn't mean they put any seasoning on it. It's just been allowed to sit long enough to dry out to burn properly. I want to say one more thing. Okay? I'll fix that. Okay? Where's the show? And one other thing is, if you're allowing the wood to sit and you're allowing it to season yourself, the way you store it is going to be important. So the moisture actually leaves the wood long ways, because if you think about how wood forms, it's from the former vascular tissue of the plant itself. What that means basically is that water moves through the wood this way. So when water leaves after the wood's been cut, after the tree is dead, it's going to leave the exact same way. It doesn't leave this way. So the smaller the splits are, right, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to dry faster, but the shorter the splits are has a greater effect. Now, a thinner split will dry faster always, but the biggest difference is how short the split itself is. So you can imagine it this way. If you just took a circular cut of a tree and let it sit out, in a very short time, it would be bone dry. Whereas if you took that same massive tree and had it in a long piece, it would take many months for it to dry out. So if you're cutting wood yourself and you're going to stack it so it seasons well, don't let the pieces be too long, or else you're going to have to wait a very, very long time for it to be about 20% moisture.
So we're about ready to light the fire on this little Model 60 here. And I wanted to kind of walk you through how to set your smoker up in preparation for building your fire. The first thing you'll probably notice is I've got the main door of the cook chamber open. We do that to basically open up every possible vent and every possible door on the smoker so that when we build the fire, it has as much oxygen going to it as possible for the initial part of the burn. Once the coal bed develops and the fire is burning the way we want it to, we can go ahead and close this door down and start adjusting our vents and our doors accordingly. So I'm here with my little Model 60 and I'm ready to light my fire. I've got my logs, they're ready to be stacked up in a little log cabin or lattice formation.
Sorry.
All right, so we're ready to start the fire. I've got my wood in the form of our little splits that we've got cut down. All right, so I'm ready to start my fire. I've got my wood in the form of splits that I've cut and split down to just the right size. I've got my lighter. And for this smoker, we're going to use wood chips or tinder that we've gotten off of our splitter. I've got a bucket here filled with little bits of tiny wood splinters and chips that have come off of our wood splitter, and honestly, this stuff lights like napalm. It's a perfect way to start a fire. All you got to do is just save this stuff when it comes off your splitter. You can also buy bags of wood chips at the store, works just as well. And you're going to make a pile of this right in the middle of your smoker, and then on top of that, you're going to build your splits and light it. Alright, so once I've applied the lighter to it, now the logs are lit, or at least the tinder's lit, and burning nice and hot. It'll ignite the logs on top of it, and before you know it, our fire will be ready to start adding fuel. And the rest of the cooker, in the meantime, will come up to temperature, and then we'll be ready to add meat and cook some barbecue. Yeah, it's my mom's birthday today, and I've kind of missed the birthday because I've been here filming this stuff, so I just texted her with a happy birthday text, and this was her response. Good luck on YouTube. Happy birthday, Mom.
Now, you've probably heard a lot about clean smoke versus dirty smoke in the past, but I want to break down exactly what I mean. Okay, so what I mean by clean smoke is what you see coming out of this guy right here. So if you look up at that, you see maybe a little bit of a wisp of smoke every now and then, but what I see mostly is just waves of heat. And that's because we're burning the fire efficiently. So, in essence, when you're burning wood, it's mostly carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, right? But you're exposing it to more oxygen through the air, and it's bursting into flames, and it's producing heat and smoke that travel across the food and then up out the smokestack. So if you've got plenty of oxygen and your fire is burning hot, you produce different compounds than if your fire isn't very hot and you don't have enough oxygen. So high heat, high oxygen produces small gas molecules, and so those are harder to see. When you have big molecules that haven't been fully oxidized, that haven't been burned at a high enough temperature, you see that as white smoke. So when we say thin blue smoke or clean smoke, something like that, what we really mean is burning a hot fire with lots of oxygen so that the compounds that you produce are the most flavorful compounds. Because when you produce those big compounds, those aren't actually good tasting compounds. When you take a bite of it at first, oh, it tastes smoky, you're like, oh, this is smoky, this is good. But after a couple bites, you realize, oh, wait a minute, this isn't good. And once you've had barbecue made with clean smoke, you can immediately recognize barbecue made with dirty smoke. So the chemical reactions that are going on in the firebox are very complicated, but in essence, you want to burn a hot fire with lots of oxygen, and then you're going to produce the kind of smoke that you want. Now, when you burn things, you produce carbon dioxide and water vapor, and basically everything that you burn. And then you produce other compounds. Okay, so we're trying to affect those other compounds. So if you burned a fire, say, so clean that it was only producing carbon dioxide and water vapor, you wouldn't get any smoke flavor on your meat. It would be just like cooking something on a gas grill, because those products are only carbon dioxide and water vapor. So for us, we're trying to burn a fire that's very, very clean, but we're still producing compounds that aren't CO2 or water vapor, because wood is a natural product. There's never going to be 100% efficiency in burning. But you can always make sure that your fire has oxygen, that you have structured the fire in a way that it will burn well, and that's how you get the coveted thin blue smoke, which is exactly what we want. Now, if you want to see an example of dirty smoke, we'll show you that right now. So Eric, why don't you close that firebox door, and we're going to deprive the fire of oxygen. All right, so now I start to see more whiffs of smoke. In probably 30 seconds, it'll just be a slow, like super thick white smoke that's coming out of there, and it's going to be gross, not the kind of stuff you want on your meat.
There you go.
Yeah, this is done.
That smoke is brought to you by Traeger.
So this is exactly what we're talking about. Thick white smoke, and for a lot of beginners, they think this is what you want, and I'm here to tell you, no, 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 no. It is absolutely not what you want. Okay, so you've seen the two extremes of clean and dirty smoke, and during a cook, you're going to get, variation. Every time you add a new log, you'll get a little bit of white smoke as that log catches. But for the vast majority of the time you're cooking, what you should see is the clear heat waves, or maybe just a thin, wispy smoke coming out of your smoke.
Go ahead and rebuild this guy.
Whew. Betty. Oh. Alright, then we've got a coal bed in both of these guys. Rock and roll Goblin America, we're gonna do that. That's dirty smoke right there, man.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how well it showed up on camera before. I'm talking about like the heat waves of clean smoke, but if you want to get a good picture of what I'm talking about, if you look at the stack on my 500, right now, as I'm looking through it, I see that metal tube that's back there at the place next door. It looks all wavy and like the lines aren't straight. That's exactly what I mean. We see clean heat coming out, even though we're burning lots of wood in the firebox. So if you take a look at the firebox, full of wood, lots of flame. So it's not like there's nothing going on, but what we're doing is we're creating those most flavorful compounds, and that's the look that you want.
Winner.
Okay?
Kids these days.
They ain't got no respect for nobody or nothing. They don't want to work hard. They don't want to do what's right. I think that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because the government ain't going to tell you the truth. Just like them elections, they decide who's going to win those much before they ever happen.
With the glasses, it's actually a little bit scary.
Yeah, well, from time to time, I like to say what's on my mind.
3, 2, 1, fire.
Now, when cooking on a backyard smoker like this 60-gallon pit right here, the principles of fire management are exactly the same as with one of these big pits, but the dynamics change slightly. So what I want to talk about right now is, well, that the firebox is the heart of any smoker, and the heart of the firebox is the coal bed. So what we work really hard to do when barbecuing is to build a great coal bed, because that's what's going to light the next logs that you put on, and it's really what's going to fuel, it's what's going to push forward your whole cook. If you let your coal bed go, then you've got major problems trying to get your wood to burn cleanly and efficiently. But if you keep your coal bed in check, then you're going to have easy lights on the wood that you put in, and every part of the process will be made simpler and easier. So let's take a look at this coal bed, and then Eric's going to show us how he runs the fire in this offset smoker right here. All right, so can you get a shot of that? All right, so here we've got the coal bed. So it's just essentially the wood that's burned down to just coals. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of flatten it out so that we can use that as the base for the fire going forward. Now, notice that there's no grate in here. Now, a lot of smokers come with grates in them. And in my opinion, you may disagree, but in my opinion, I don't like them. Because usually what happens in my experience is that those coals get burned up because they have oxygen coming in from all around, and they turn into ash and they fall down to the bottom. So when you put your next log on there, it has a really hard time catching. But because these coals are essentially like charcoal, they don't have to have a bunch of oxygen around them, because they're not going to provide a bunch of dirty smoke like a log would. So what I want to do is use the coal bed as essentially just a big reservoir of heat, so that every time I put on another log, boom, it catches right away. And so we've been filming and talking for a little while, and so this coal bed needs to have more fuel added, and if we don't, then it's going to die, which we do not want. So Eric's going to show you exactly how he will adjust this coal bed and how he'll place the fuel into the firebox.
Okay.
So you can tell your wood has cooled down completely. When it kind of is in the same shape as it was, looks like the original sticks that you put in there, but now it's completely covered in gray ash, and you can see a nice orange glow coming from inside of it. I'm gonna take the shovel and I'm gonna kind of rake it around a little bit. That's gonna even everything out and give you a nice even heat across the coal bed. Now we're ready to add some fuel. And within just a few seconds, you should see flames bursting out of the logs that you've put on the coal bed, which means they are starting to burn nice and cleanly, which means they're gonna be contributing nice clean heat to your cook chamber and whatever you've got cooking inside. So I'm gonna close this door back up and let it get back to its thing. Okay.
Schwitzing. I can't believe how much I'm schwitzing over here.
It's good.
Yeah. This is a big schlep.
All right. Now, in terms of running the fire, there are some things that you can do that will help you out and other things that will hinder you. Now, if you've got nice, dry, perfect wood, then this next step isn't necessary, but it never hurts. So if you just want to make sure that you start burning a clean fire immediately, or your wood is maybe a little too green, it's got a little too much water in it, what you can do is take your splits and put them on top of your firebox. This preheats the wood so it's closer to the temperature at which it would produce flame, and it heats up the wood so that water gets forced out. So it's going to be a drier, hotter piece of wood, so when you put it on your fire, it'll get going like that. A lot of people are thinking about trying to burn a perfectly clean fire. A lot of times means they leave the door wide open to the firebox, which it's not bad, but you're really wasting a lot of fuel, and a lot of those good flavorful compounds that you want to go to your meat are exiting through the firebox door. So what I like to do in terms of burning an efficient fire as much as I possibly can and still burning a clean fire, I take the door and I crack it like that. So there's a gap like that big, so there's plenty of room for air to rush in. There's lots of oxygen. It doesn't start producing a dirty fire, but it forces the air to move across the cooker and up out the smokestack because it's leaving there and it's drawing everything in so you don't get waste. So if I open the door all the way, I put my hand here, it's super, super hot because I'm losing heat, I'm losing smoke, and I want that to go and cook my food and flavor my food. So this pushes in all the heat, allows the air to get drawn in, and then you're burning not only a clean fire, but one that's going to use less wood in the end. Over the course of a long cook, if you're doing brisket on one of these, it could be 16 hours, a lot of things can happen. Say you're cooking overnight and you fall asleep, and then you wake up and run over to your firebox and all you've got left is something that looks like this. Something that looks like just coals, there's no active fire going. I know the situation, I have been there. I've definitely fallen asleep at times when I shouldn't have. So the way to reconcile this is you get some nice splits, something that's appropriate size for your smoker, definitely nothing too big, and you're going to place them on the coals and you're going to kind of nurse the fire back to health. So right now it's not a healthy fire, but luckily we have enough coals in there that it shouldn't be a huge problem to get it going again. That's still raging hot. Running the fire in the pit is what I do for the vast majority of when I'm barbecuing. So it's not injecting stuff, it's not working on marinades or doing any kind of fancy stuff to the meat. It's actually a couple hours of prep and then 16, maybe 18 hours of cook, which is primarily this. You know, at some point I'll pull everything out and wrap it, but this is what I do day in, day out when I'm barbecuing. This is really my main job. I watch fires. It's really what I do. And so sometimes I joke about that. People ask me what I do for a living, and I say I watch fires. But really, this is what I'm doing. And so if you look at this one, this is a perfectly healthy fire. This is exactly what you want to see. And while you're running the pit, you're eventually going to be adding more and more wood, and people will say, how often do you add a split? To me, it's not a time issue. It's how's the pit running. So if the temperature starts to drop off, right? As soon as it starts to drop off, I'm going to add another piece of wood, because depending on the size of wood and just kind of the nature of the fire, you'll grow to learn exactly what putting a piece of wood will do to the temperature in your pit. And so right now, it's perfect the way it is. Everything's running beautifully. There's nothing that needs to happen. But when it comes time to add a piece of wood to your fire, you always want to put it so that it's stacking kind of in a lattice structure on the logs that are still there. And so what I mean by that is, right now they have two logs going like this. This one I would put in this way like that, because it's going to stack up that way, and fire likes to climb up on things. And so this allows the fire to climb up and start to ignite that log on top, rather than it sitting somewhere on the side and just kind of smoldering away. That's what you don't want to do. Now, one issue that makes a 500 really forgiving is the size of the coal bed and the temperature of the coal bed. Because you can use a huge chunk of wood in here and it'll eat it up. Or you can put in a couple pieces of wood and it's not going to make your temperature spike like crazy. It's not going to do a 200-degree jump, nothing like that. So it's forgiving in that sense. And so to just illustrate how hot this coal bed is, which is great, which is what you want, I brought out this infrared thermometer. Now this is a 3,000-degree beast. I love this thing. And in my experience, backyard pits usually have a coal bed temperature of about 1,200 degrees, maybe 1,300. And bigger pits, the bigger the pit, the higher the temperature of the coal bed. So that 250, I'm guessing, is probably somewhere around 1,500. This one right here, if I'm going to guess, I'm going to say, well, it's going to be between 16 and 1,800 degrees probably. But let's try it and find out. $2,100 degrees.
Yo!
That's the hottest it's ever been.
That is... Yeah. Can we get the pan out to some steaks?
Woo! Dude, you could caveman grill a steak in like 10 seconds in that beast.
Check this guy.
Yeah. And check it out. I've never measured a temperature that hot in one of my fires, but this is cool. Yeah, so most of this coal bed is, yeah, right at between 16 and 1,800 degrees. 1870 right there, 1712, 1823, 1885, 1875, 1795. So between 16 and 1,800 degrees is usual, but there's that one spot in there where those coals are glowing white hot. So it is very, very toasty. So the moral of the story is, if you got a screaming hot coal bed, actually it's kind of uncomfortable to be right here because it's so hot. If you got a screaming hot coal bed, that's a lot of forgiveness. You can toss on a big log and it'll just eat it right up, because there's so much heat in those coals that you'll surpass the temperature at which wood smolders and go right to the temperature at which it breaks into flame. All right, we're here at the 288-gallon tank, and if you guys aren't familiar with how one of these things works, basically you point and you click the button and it will give you a temperature reading. So I like this because I can use it to read temperatures of a coal bed, because this thing goes to 3,000 degrees. Because I had a brilliant idea. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go get an infrared thermometer and measure the temperature of the smoker in different places, measure the temperature of the coal bed, but I couldn't find any that read high enough temperatures to read the temperature of the fire of the coal bed. So I went and got this guy at ThermoWorks, and I love it because no matter how hot something is, I can point, shoot, it tells me the temperature. So this one, my guess is, it's going to be somewhere between 1,400 and 1,600 degrees. So let's point it at the coal bed and see what we get. Okay. Right there. Oh, so we got 1,655, we got 1,488, 1,557, 1,615, 1,598, 1,562. So most of it's 1,500 to 1,600 degrees in that coal bed right there, which is pretty much exactly what I expected. And so the good thing about this is, much like the 500, you can put wood on and it'll catch right away, so that you have kind of just this momentum of the cook going on. You put in a log, it catches right away. You put in a log, it catches right away. You cook your meat and you're sending flavor and heat through the smoker, cooking your meat and providing all the deliciousness that you want in barbecue. Now, to demonstrate how quickly wood catches fire, this is actually a pretty green log. It's pretty heavy. After you've handled a bunch of wood, you'll be able to tell right away upon picking one up whether it's pretty green or it's well seasoned. This one's pretty heavy, but because the fire's hot enough, I can take this and throw it on top and it's going to be catching fire really soon. So I spread those logs out so that I can set this one just like that, just like in the big pit. You want a lattice structure so the flames can rise. So throw this guy on there. All right, we got that guy there now, and so my guess is 60 seconds it'll be, okay, less than 60 seconds. Right now it's already bursting into flame. And so this is gonna be perfect. We can kind of close the door down, keep cooking, and you're just gonna repeat this process until you've completed the cook. And at that point, you're gonna close everything down, take your meat out, everything's great. But this is the process that you use to produce great barbecue. So if you go to Franklin Barbecue in Texas, this is what they're doing. They're managing fire hour after hour. They're keeping it clean. They're making sure that they keep enough fire in the firebox to keep the cook going forward. This is where all the magic of barbecue happens. That's how you feed a fire. That's how you keep it going. Yeah, what's the melting point of steel?
27.
Oh. Yeah, okay. This is more normal. 1807, 1850, 1901, 1710. Yeah, that's normal. Now, the last issue I want to address is where in the firebox you should build your fire. Now, for me, when I build a fire, I build it close to the outside door. And the reason for that is that gives me more space between where the fire actually is and the beginning of where the meat starts in the cook chamber. Because that allows those super hot exhaust gases to cool down a little bit before they actually go and hit the meat. And so even a small change in temperature, a small temperature drop, can have a big effect on how it treats the meat when it gets there. Because the hotter you go, the greater the distribution of speeds of the molecules. What that means is basically this. At a low temperature, all the molecules are basically going the same speed. And you have some that are a little hotter and some that are a little cooler, but the hotter you get, then you have some radical, super hot exhaust gases, and then some that are a little cooler. But the average, which is what temperature is, the average kinetic energy, is somewhere in the middle, but the curve of those molecules is flattened out. All that's to say this. I think it's better to build your fire close to the door so that the really excited, really hot molecules of gas have a chance to calm down before they go and burn stuff inside the cook chamber. And so you can build it closer. You can build it right next to the opening to the cook chamber. You can build it in the middle of the firebox. But for the reasons I just mentioned, I like to build it close to the door. Now, people might say, oh, well, if you build it close to the door, you're going to lose heat and smoke out the back end. No, what you can do is you close the door down about like this so that because the fire is craving oxygen, it's going to pull in air and it's going to travel across the cook chamber and out the smokestack at the other end. Still going to be burning a perfectly clean fire, but there's no inefficiency in the fire leaving out the wrong side. Should I include a thing on the apron for, like, as a holster for this guy? How sick would that be? Just, you're like, I wonder what that temperature is. I can tell you. Nailed it. Here. Right now you're 91 degrees.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Cool cucumber.
Thank you guys for watching. I know we threw a lot of information at you. I really hope it was helpful. If you did find it helpful and if you enjoyed the video, hit subscribe down below and then hit the notification bell so you get updates every time we put out new content. So until next time, keep experimenting and we'll see you in the next video.